Yes. Yeah, definitely. Thank God. Oh,
Greetings to all and sundry, my people of the southern Cameroons. Accept greetings from me, John Ba Akuro. Today is November 5 in the year of our Lord 2021. And my people, I come today with the fourth edition of our program, The Soul of the Southern Cameroons. On today's edition, we are going to examine a variety of issues, but our focus is actually going on the distortions, the deliberate distortions conducted by La République du Cameroun on the history of the people of the Southern Cameroons. A lot of these distortions have been meant to clearly divide us, have been meant to make us, my people of the Southern Cameroons, turn against ourselves, have been meant to make us think that we were enemies in the past, reason we cannot cohabit in the future or even today. For this reason, I am bringing onto this program a special guest, a man of metal, a man who is widely read, a scholar, a writer, and especially this is a man of integrity who, over the years, has demonstrated that even when you find yourself in a circle where people generally fear to speak the truth, to speak up to power, it makes sense to tell the world what you know to the best of your knowledge to be the truth. Because a lot of our people say, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I like to introduce on this program our guest. His name is Professor Anthony Ndi. And so, good afternoon, Professor Anthony Ndi. And you are welcome onto the soul of the Southern Cameroons. How are you doing today?
great, great, John, great. Nice meeting you. Nice really meeting you after I don't know how many years. Look back on when you sat in front of me as a pupil. Yes, I think you used one word which could best describe the program you're running. The soul, the soul, the soul of Southern Cameroons. And if you are talking of the soul of Southern Cameroons, I will take it. It doesn't begin in Cameroon, it begins in Nigeria. Although at one point it's contemporaneous in that the roads begin to be set in Victoria and at the same time in Lagos. Anyway, let me get down to it. There is a real soul, a very powerful soul of Southern Cameroons, which begins in Nigeria. And that is because our whole setting was always with Nigeria. If you look at our history, beginning from the defeat of Germany in 1916 and the breaking up of Cameroon into two, you had British Southern Cameroons and you had French Cameroon. And we were administered as part of Nigeria from 1916 or officially from 1922 to 1946 and again up to 1961. So we're always part of Nigeria, and whatever we evolved to become began in Nigeria. And so this soul you talked about is nothing better could no better word could describe what emerged beginning in 1939 stroke 1940 as the Cameroon Youth League in Lagos.
Yes, Prof. I know
And this
you.
was,
I know you're really so moved to get into the beef of the matter, but I'll recommend you hold your peace for just one moment. So we come back to this in just a jiffy, so that we have the opportunity at this point to you know should I say, get into our program. And usually with uh, we begin with a review of the things that happened in the course of the week, and that gives us the opportunity to get everyone up to speed. So while you hold your peace, we go straight into some of the things that characterized this week um, in the southern Cameroons, and I mean with our neighbors. I mean, some of the things that happened there that had a direct bearing on us. So we get straight into the newspapers, and the first newspaper we're reviewing today is the Guardian Post. When you look at the Guardian Post, it takes us back to what happened last week onto early this week for the people of the southern Cameroons when the stakeholders involved with the liberation of the southern Cameroons met in Canada for a retreat during which they had, elaborate discussions about internal cohesion. However, the newspapers or pressmen had varying views about what happened in Canada. So the Guardian Post says separatist kingpins endorse effective school functioning in Northwest and the Southwest. Of course, this perspective of the Guardian Post, you already know this to be false because it's true that issues of education, issues of access to humanitarian organizations so they could get to the people who are in need were discussed. But during these discussions, it emerged that the people, that the actors responsible for ensuring or for causing difficulties of access to for humanitarian organizations into the places where the internally displaced people are in need is the sole responsibility of La République du Cameroon. Because we're able to establish with evidence that a lot of the times the soldiers of La République du Cameroon made it difficult for humanitarian organizations to have access to the IDPs. And the case in point that stands tall for everyone to see was a situation with Médecins Sans Frontières. This is an international non-governmental organization that was providing much needed medical assistance to IDPs both in hospitals and even in distant places where people who were affected because they were running away from the conflict and could not get to the hospitals could receive care. But the government of La République du Cameroon brutally put an end to the activities of Médecins Sans Frontières. And also, it was discussed and it was clearly established that the government of Cameroon violated international regulations by sometimes using vehicles on which were marked the names of international relief organizations, some even with UN markings, or they deliberately took vehicles and put these markings on and used them to attack the positions of the boys. And consequent on this, they decided to become more vigilant and decided to begin interrogating people here and there and to be sure that the delegations actually seeking access were really relief organizations who had the sole intention of providing relief assistance to all those in need. And so it wasn't like we were taking responsibility for blocking access and that we were going to begin guaranteeing access. So absolutely the papers had it wrong. The next issue was that of education. The statistics before us were clear that there are counties like Momo where just about 2% of those who have to go to school are in school, and the county with the highest percentage of school going was Donga Mantung with just about 52%. 52%, meaning up to 48% of those who have to go to school are still not going. And so, looking at these statistics, the issue came to the table. What do we need to do to, get things changed? And again, we pointed out, uh, a good majority of the delegates pointed out that the problems are caused more by the government of Cameroon because over 500 village settlements have been reduced to ashes because the government is practicing a scorched earth policy. So a lot of the parents with children of school going age are now in the forests. They can't be anywhere near where schools are to enroll their children in school. And even those who are going who want to go to school still meet the wrath of the military. We saw what happened in Kumba at the Mother Francisca International Bilingual Academy, where the military walked in and brutally terminated the lives of about seven pupils and turned around and picked innocent young boys from different directions on whom is now dangling a death sentence. And so these issues came to the discussion, and we said the onus is on the government of Cameroon. Because we also saw very clearly, the freshest incident in mind, that of baby Carol Louise, right in the heart of Boya, a child in a vehicle being driven to school, whose life was brutally ended, still by Mr. Paul Bia's talks. So, from that viewpoint, it couldn't be the responsibility of Southern Cameroon stakeholders to determine that children go to school, because we had made clear about 2 years back that parents should send their children to school, but they should make those decisions based on the security atmosphere wherever they find themselves. So they should take into consideration the security situation in making decisions as to whether their children should go to school or not. But on the other hand, the Southern Cameroon stakeholders have provided for community schools in almost all these localities to ensure that children are able to have at least some form of education while the process of liberating our land, of sending out the occupier, La République du Cameroun, is underway. And so you look at the Guardian, at the Post newspaper, it comes up with yet another perspective, though also says something similar to what the Guardian Post says. It says Southern Cameroonian stakeholders endorse request Swiss initiative be multilateral. Of course, I had pointed here on this platform as one of the stakeholders that attended the retreat that the stakeholders in Toronto did not endorse. And I'm sure you've seen that from the press releases coming out of, the major organizations, groups, and movements that participated at that retreat. You've seen a release from the IG Care which states clearly that endorsement will only come after the Swiss initiative at mediation has been opened to other international partners to ensure a multi-mediation process which will be transparent and which will be executed according to internationally recognized standards. In my last broadcast, I read the release from the consortium on this platform, which said virtually the same thing. And there are a school of other releases that have come up, even from the armed groups that took part. I've seen one from Seven Qatar. I've seen another one from the TTA, and I know the EGOFC is definitely going to release one. And all of these releases converge around the same thing, that the Southern Cameroon stakeholders did not endorse. And take note, non-endorsement doesn't mean we rejected the Swiss initiative. No, we have never even rejected the Swiss initiative right from the start. The same uh, should I say recommendation? It wasn't a recommendation; it was a directive. The same directive given in Toronto is what we have given since 2019. That we needed the process to be open, to be transparent, and that we will not accept a situation where Switzerland is a unique mediator. And so, the French language paper Emergence, with an English language headline, says after the Toronto gathering, public opinion remains divided. Of course, it's true that there was so much talk around this retreat, and there's so much talk. With accusations, counter accusations, people are meeting with enablers. Perhaps it's even sponsored by by the government of La République du Cameroon because they want people to go and settle and accept a one Cameroon option. Of course, it was nothing about that. And I guess that is what informs Emergence to say opinions remain divided. From Emergence, we move on to Eden. And Eden says verbal bricks blast Toronto Anglophone Peace Initiative. Of course, I mean, Eden is simply talking about the social media noise. We heard a lot of things, a lot of conspiracy theories, I mean, a lot of attacks, a lot of accusations, with even claims that it is the anthem of La République du Cameroun that was sung at the Toronto retreat, which of course was a very big lie, because I guess on this platform you had the opportunity to have a glimpse into the hall where you saw the Southern Cameroon's flag flying everywhere. You had the opportunity to listen to Professor Fonkem Achangakeng, who made clear that we were there to talk about the wishes and aspirations of the people of the Southern Cameroons, demonstrated by various surveys, beginning from that of the late Christian Cardinal Toomey, through that of the CDN itself, and then one by the CIDI of veteran journalist Victor Epiengome, which all indicate that the people of the Southern Cameroons, in their overwhelming majority, want absolute independence and nothing to do ever again with La République du Cameroun. And then we also have Forum Libre, that's another French language newspaper that got interested in what happened in Toronto. And so they approached me, my humble person, for an interview. And of course, if you get a copy of this paper, you will be able to find in it all clarifications as to what happened exactly in Toronto. And of course, you will be told that we are still to come up with resolutions, but in the interim, we made clear and we're still reiterating and making clear nobody gave the Swiss a blank check. And away from that, we have another French language paper, Le Zenith. I'm interested in Le Zenith because Le Zenith says something which is, you know, I think this is quite interesting. Le Zenith says there is what they call in French, they call it haute trahison. He calls that treason, and he says it's very high treason. He says the cadre administratif et militaire parmi les relais des Zamba boys. So that, top civil administration officials are, I mean, accomplices, and that they kind of play, transfer channels or whatsoever, or they play relay for the Amber Boys. Of course, this is a pattern. What is going to be happening to a lot of those Southern Cameroonians who have refused to understand that this is an important moment for them to get totally liberated and free, and continue to think that La République du Cameroun will ever have any consideration for them. Of course, these people erroneously are letting themselves to be pulled by the nose by La République du Cameroun, and because La République du Cameroun wants to start displacing some of them and causing them harm, that is why you find this kind of accusations in newspapers. I guess in my last broadcast, I talked about a divisional officer and brigade commander somewhere in the noon, where the people, came out with claims that they were actually Amber Boys themselves, and so they wanted them kicked out of that administrative unit. This is something that you are going to be seeing over and over and over. So let me turn my attention to the guest of the day, Professor Anthony D. I'd like to get your comment about this newspaper headlines.
Those
Okay.
who get into speculation, those who uh, maybe take sides already with the government and things like that. The papers, I wish the papers were what they used to be in the past, that they brought out the views that actually were educative, informative, and views that were could help to build up society. These ones, you have to work very hard, to get what. There's a lot of, as you actually pointed out, um, it's more speculation, more of trying to divide. So the papers are not, they're not as cohesive as one would expect of newspapers, meant to entertain, to educate, to inform, and all those things, one head off in those days. They are no longer what you have on the papers, up in the papers.
I know you definitely paid some attention to the Toronto retreat. What comment do you have about the noise being made regarding that retreat?
I think that is up to date. That's one of the best things that has happened. Uh, Call it if you like, to the movement in trying to get one voice for southern Cameroons, whether in diaspora or on the ground. There should be one voice, and there has to be one voice, and there eventually has to be one voice. Whatever you are doing, whatever you are going to, all the divisions, eventually you will sit around a common conference table. And the sooner that takes place, the better. And I think that is what the Toronto retreat uh, was out to achieve. And I think they went a long way towards. Uh, I mean, we just look forward to see what happens next after the Toronto meeting or the retreat, because that is actually the way forward. That you can get, like Mao Zedong said, get a thousand flowers to blossom, put everybody on board, and then get some type of consensus. I think that's what the Toronto meeting was, the retreat tried to achieve.
Thank you very
It
much.
may be a view which is still too strong for others to admit, but that's where they will eventually go.
Thank you very much, Professor Anton Ndi. We will take a short musical interlude and then we get into the beef of our program. Well, you're welcome back. We had the opportunity there to listen or to enjoy, with this beautiful piece from the southern Cameroons. That is our culture, that is who we are. And I guess this gives us the opportunity to settle and get set for this beautiful program. Professor Anton D, like I said earlier, is an author and writer. He's a writer, he's a historian, he's a university lecturer, and one of his publications, or one of his books, is titled Southern West Cameroon Revisited, 1950 to 1972, Volume 1, Unveiling Inescapable Traps. So I want to turn my attention back to you, Professor Antonin D. And Let's begin perhaps by addressing this question. What is the difference between West Cameroon and Southern Cameroons? I know people have used this sometimes interchangeably, but I mean, it's absolutely a historical construct. So, what is the difference between West Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons?
Yeah, that is a question which encapsulates a lot. And I was saying, when I first heard you talk about the soul of Southern Cameroons, I could see the nucleus already taking shape between 1939 and 1940. And 1939 was in Victoria, uh, led by G.M. Bele, I mean G. Bene. Then at the same time, almost at the same time, you had a group in Nigeria led by uh, led by you had of course Endele was always there, and then Kale was actually the leader at the time. There was Foncha, there was Muna. They were studying in Nigeria, working in Nigeria, and they decided, to come together. But they didn't come at a time as Cameroonians. It was following the example of Nigeria with whom we had evolved, we had grown. Nigeria already at the time, we are talking of, those days before uh, real nationalism and the quest for independence. Nigeria had a Nigerian Youth League, and so Cameroonians began the Cameroon Youth League of youth. And this eventually grew up in Nigeria into what was called the NCNC under Namdi Azikiwe. And you know the NCNC came to include Cameroon, the National Council of Nigerian Cameroons. So Cameroon began taking shape there at the time. But more concretely, this happened in 1953 when when parliamentarians in Lagos and in Enugu, because of the type of things that were happening in Nigeria, especially in the Eastern House of Assembly, opted out and said they were not Nigerians, they were Southern Cameroonians. Uh, I think many of you would have heard of the neutrality bloc in eastern Nigeria, where these members of parliament came together and decided not to participate in Nigerian politics, but to start up with identifying themselves as Southern Cameroonians and wanted to move back to Cameroon and to have their own House of Assembly. So after that, they had meetings, about at least two meetings in Manfay, and there was one at least in London, and they eventually were able to get the House of Assembly for themselves, which opened up in Boya in 1954, and for the first time, this was 26th October 1954, as Southern Cameroons, very solidly Southern Cameroons. And this from that time, 1954, until 1961, it was always Southern Cameroons, solidly so. And the remarkable things that happened between 1954 and 1961 would include the elections of 1959, which were the best that you have had in Africa, for any time at all. When you had Endele, who was the leader of government business, actually became the first premier, conducting elections that were won by the opposition, by Foncha and the KNDP. So you found that was the first time you ever had real democracy taking effect of Southern Cameroonians identifying themselves as such. This was, I mean, it took a long time to ever have Nigeria get even to that pedestal, and that was only recently under when there was the change,
Yeah, other
to
President Goodluck
the
Jonathan.
recent change. Which was that again?
President Goodluck Jonathan
Yes, when whether Goodluck Jonathan was defeated and handed power over
to President Muhammadu Buhari.
exactly to Buhari. So Nigeria was getting into that. How many years after Southern Cameroons? 1959 to 20,000 something. So that tells you how advanced we were as Southern Cameroonians. Anyway, your question was about Southern Cameroons and West Cameroon.
Exact.
So you are Southern Cameroons. Maybe I'll talk too long because I'm, a teacher. Southern Cameroons was
Just right
there
on that.
vividly. Yes,
Yeah, so right on that.
yes, strongly, strongly from 1954 till 1961 when we had the plebiscite. And when we had the plebiscite, which was the most difficult thing Southern Cameroons ever faced, uh, they voted, the Southern Cameroonians voted to join the Republic of Cameroon. And anybody looking at what the situation was at the time was like at the time would not have thought that having to choose between Nigeria and Cameroons, to vote in a plebiscite, that anybody would have um, choosing Cameroons or Cameroon, or like you had Chief Fonachiri missing it. It was a choice uh, between fire and water, or between thieves and you know other brigands. But they choose Southern Cameroonians choose to meet their brothers. At least they thought they were brothers, by voting for reunification in 1961. That was the hope. And when they voted, and there was this, I mean, after the elections, there was the Fumban conference. It was decided that they should come together as a federal union, a federal unit, and to get the federal unit, Southern Cameroons up to the night of 30th September 1961 was still a trust territory of Britain. Meanwhile, the Republic of Cameroon had already had independence on 1st January 1960. But take note that if you are looking at what actually took place, Southern Cameroon was better advanced, far more advanced than the Republic of Cameroon, because already they were self-governing 4 years ahead of the Republic of Cameroon. But the Republic of Cameroon was granted independence faster for reasons better known to France. Let me just make very just quick observation. There are stages that had to be followed before a country could become independent. First, there had to be elections, there had to be a constitution, there had to be a number of formalities arrived at. All these did not take place in East Cameroon. If you look at it very carefully, Ahidjo, who became president, was never at any time elected. He was not elected uh, as president by any universal vote. No, it was a French backing that pushed him without a constitution, without elections, from 1959 to 1960 when he became president. Whereas Southern Cameroon was following all the stages. As I pointed out in 1959, elections were conducted by the government and won by the opposition. But Republic of Cameroon, with which Southern Cameroons came into union in 1960, did not go through the same procedure. Ahidjo was never elected. They didn't have any constitution. All this came after independence. Now, why were the French rushing? That is a whole chapter. Why the French had begun by in 1958 by saying all French-speaking colonies were going to be part of the French overseas. They were going to become French overseas territories. But all of a sudden, in 1960, they decided to grant independence. So, what type of independence was it? Is part of the problem we are facing till today. Anyway, what we are talking about is East and West Cameroon. So if you want to go legally, at midnight on 30th September 1961, Southern Cameroons became independent as Southern Cameroons, and French Cameroon, which was already independent as Cameroon Republic, moved back. So when they had to unify, it was between Southern Cameroons, which now became West Cameroon, and East Cameroon, formerly Republic of Cameroon, which became East Cameroon. So you had two co-equal states, independent. And let me make this quick observation here. So when we keep talking of fighting for independence, it historically, I don't know, it needs some further exploration because independent at midnight uh, on September 30th, 1961, you could not be talking of independence again. How many times can one country become independent? So Southern Cameroon was already independent, and they went to the Kumban Conference as an independent entity. Southern Cameroons with a constitution, with everything backing up that name.
So, Prof,
So in
what do
all
you
the,
want us to
yes,
be? What do you think is the appropriate thing to say today? That we are struggling for the restoration of our independence, or we are struggling to acquire independence?
the word is restoration. The logical word, the historical word, the meaningful word should be restoration. You can't have independence twice.
Okay.
I know we
Yes.
all want to be something called Ambazonia. Now I have a whole book written, uh, one of the volumes that I wrote from 19, I mean, 1880, 1858 to 1972 actually brings out the origins of Ambas Bay, from which you
Okay.
have
Perhaps we'll come
Amazonia.
to that in a few, Prof. Just to restate that what you are explaining here, therefore, is that the Southern Cameroons ceased to exist on, I mean, when they got into this reunification of the Republic du Cameroon, after acquiring independence as Southern Cameroons on the night of September 30, 1961, and so getting into a new construct known as the Federal Republic of Cameroon, it now adopted the name West Cameroon. And the French Cameroon, which was already the Republic of Cameroon or La République du Cameroun, independent on the 1st of January 1960, got into this new construct, the Federal Republic of Cameroon, as East Cameroon. So, which means each time we refer to West Cameroon, we are talking of the federal experience we went in, the failed federal experience we went in with La République du Cameroon. And when you talk of Southern Cameroons, you are referring to the country that became independent on September 30, 1961, before finding itself in this unfortunate situation. Is that an appropriate summary of what you were talking about?
Perfect, 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 John. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. We will move on, and I'd like you to actually give a bit of this history you were just talking about regarding the name Ambazonia. I think a lot of the young people who just grew up and heard the name Ambazonia should have the opportunity to understand its origins.
Okay. Ambas Bay, I don't know if you use the word discovery, was first discovered by Alfred Secker in 1858. when he, when he had those problems that there were in Fernando Po, when the Catholic government, I mean, yes, the Catholic government there wanted to expel them from Fernando Po, or not really expel, when they said Fernando Po belonged to, was a Catholic country, the king of, the king of Spain, and that they decided to move out and to move to Victoria. When they moved to Victoria, the two things he discovered, two or three things he discovered that actually registered in his mind were first, the deep sea port at Victoria, which he saw as something which God had prepared, waiting. God had already this seaport waiting to be used effectively by the British government. And of course, he was preparing Victoria to be annexed by Britain. And then the next thing he discovered was Ambas Bay. It's from Ambas Bay that we have Amazonia. So this goes back to 1858. Then the third thing he said was that, you had this deep sea port at Victoria, and then you had it was going to be it was going to get all the trading whatever trading all the goods that came from Europe or from wherever would come in through Victoria, and then it would be moved into the hinterland. So he already foresaw what you can call southern Cameroons in 1858 with the
Yeah,
opening to the world through Victoria. I don't know what I'm making a point that you can get.
definitely.
So there
Yeah,
was
Prof, I
already
just want to go back a bit with this name, Ambas. Some historical perspectives indicate that this name, Ambas, because the bay, the area is a bay, but that the name Ambas was given to that bay by a little known German trader whose name appears not even to be very popular in history. And so they believe that perhaps naming a whole country after some, you know, some little known figure and things like that could didn't I mean doesn't really go well. I don't know. Do you have an idea about this particular perspective?
no, that one I don't know, but I know that many of the names were Bakuri. Many of the names at that time were Bakuri names that were used. Um, but the origin of of Amber's Bay, as used by Alfred Seca, as he saw it, was Amber's Bay. I
Okay.
don't know who would have named it, but
Okay.
it's a thing one can still investigate.
Definitely. So, Prof, let's
If I were at home, I would do the investigation.
yes, let's get back to our history now, to some aspects of our history that continue to rock some kind of controversy. I see today people talked about. I read Victor Julius Ngo quite rightly when I was still in school, and some intriguing aspects come out when he talks about a certain existing divide between the people of the Northwest and the Southwest. Did we have any construct known as Northwest and Southwest in the southern Cameroons?
That's a very sad comment that comes up. As I was trying to point out, there was one unit, one very permanent, strong, powerful unit, and it was Southern Cameroons. And if you look at what took place in those days under Ndele, there was only one party, the KNC, for both what now you call Northwest and Southwest, which were nothing but Southern Cameroons. So this whole thing about Northwest and Southwest only came in very unfortunately after the 1972 referendum. You had Southern Cameroons as one unit, one block until 1972, and it was in July 1972 that this small territory, Southern Cameroons, was split into two, Northwest and Southwest. And the whole idea was to so divide the people that they could never rise against. I mean, these were things that were foreseen at the time. The reason for for the referendum, they should never come together as a unit to rise against. I mean, to decide for secession. This is it's a long story, a whole chapter in one
So
of the
let me
books
get
I've
this.
written.
Let me get this straight, Prof. So you are telling me before 1972, there was no such thing as Northwest and Southwest. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Okay, so
yes,
before 1972, how was the Southern Cameroons administratively organized?
there were six divisions. You had four in, well, call it in Bamenda, which was called Bamenda, and three in the southwest, called the southwest. But they were not known that that divide was not there as a no, it was not there. So
So
there
you're
was
actually
six,
saying that we had in what could have been called the is it Bamenda province that there were three
and then yes,
what you could call division, because I think I've seen it was in Cambe, I've seen there was Manfe division, I've seen there's is
Kumba,
it Victoria division, see Kumba
yes,
division, and things like that. I
yes,
think we've had the opportunity to see that on the maps. But I think what is very interesting here is the this notion that the so-called northwest southwest that today is being used by the colonizer to create a wedge between us did not exist until
no,
1972.
yes.
Now,
You
I'd
see,
like to find out this from you. When you look at the division that was made, and I hear people say the people of the Southwest have nothing in common with the people of the Northwest. Let's get a bit into the anthropological composition of this area that is today called Southwest. Where would you say the people really come from?
it's again here. There is you have it's I've given a whole volume to all of that because I could see from I had read I'd got the interview which Wasaloko gave to Professor Ngo, and there was this confusion raised in there. Um, when you talk of the Southwest having something which unifies them, and the Northwest having another factor which unifies them, you'll be surprised to hear that this comes not from any political institution, but from the church. The Basel mission, which carried out evangelization in most of both what you now call North and Southwest regions in those days, used Douala for the divisions of the Southwest, and then used Bali for the divisions of Bamenda of Bamenda grasslands. So from there, you had this coalescing into saying, "Oh, the Southwesterners were sour." There's nothing sour about them. Look, just take Manfe. The Mafia have nothing doing with Victoria and with all. They have a lot to do with Nigeria, with the BBOs, with the Igbos, Calabaris, and people like that. Nothing to do with the rest of uh, the other ethnic groups. And you can go into whether you're talking of those in Kumba, talking of those in Bakosi land. I mean, I can take you back to the marriage between Chisntoko and a princess from the Douala in 1924. All that was under the guise of the Basel mission. So
So
it
that
is
even
from there
brings
that
me, yeah, that even brings me, Prof, to making this observation, because when you talk like that, I wonder what cultural relation you actually have between, say, for example, the people of Fontem in Le Bialem and those of of I mean of the Bakosis in Kupengwanenguba. Culturally, is there really any link?
nothing. Oh, let me even make it worse for you. If you are talking of Le BLM, you'll be shocked to hear that they have more relations with uh, with with not what do we call them now? What used to be Kaka in those days. Today we have them as what is the name? There's Akko. There is all those states there. I have to look at my at books to be able to give you
Okay, talk about
precise
Akko,
names.
Akko, right? Akko,
No,
the
but
other
actually, I'm
Yoruba
talking
man there.
about what name do we have replacing Kaka?
Kaka, I really
What
can't
name do
tell
we
you.
have? Where does the late Professor whoever came come from? But anyway, I'm talking of you have there's one of the chiefs there who claims that the people of Lebialem come from that area because the names agree and the traditions agree. You see, they have so much to do with the northwest with Bamenda than with any of the groups in the southwest. Just like you had until recently, um, much of the I mean, there was Manfey, and then there was well, but you had Batibo and all the areas there. What do you call yourselves?
Mogamo,
No, another name.
Meta,
No, um, because
Widikum.
they were okay. No, really, that if you were
I
to
guess
take yeah,
you're talking about Widikum.
Widikum,
Exact.
Widikum was part of Manfey.
Yes. Now, I
So
think
I mean,
that
when you
I
start
think
when you start putting all
this
that
prof brings
together,
us. Yeah, I think prof this brings us simply to the notion that it's difficult for us to want to look at these things based on the notion of administrative. I mean that administrative division because as Southern Cameroonians, therefore, I mean, we were simply grouped and administered in this fashion without us necessarily having what is called as was known as Northwest Southwest. So that was I mean a divisive concept, as you have established, brought in after 1972 when La République du Cameroon was already doing away with the federation and putting in place the assimilation program with the French. I think there are a lot of historical documents that prove that. Now, let us get to one other thing that Victor Julius God talks about very profusely. That during the days of the Southern Cameroons, the people of what he calls the Northwest cheated those of what he calls the Southwest so seriously, even politically and otherwise. When you look at the at political appointments at the time, be it under the government of Endele
and
and
then
under the government of Foncha, would you say there were some kind of discrepancies that could have shown some tribalist leanings in the attribution of high offices?
well, we have such a very short time between us to talk that one cannot get into all those nitty gritties. If you look at the Endele governments, not one, most of something like um, I would have liked to be very precise, but most of his ministers under Endele came from the northwest, came from Bamenda. Most, something like if he had seven, then five came, even as many as five came from Bamenda. And then when Foncha took over, most of his ministers came from the southwest. And then when Dwa took over, he even increased the ratio of ministers in his government from the southwest. So when you talk of northwest divide and the northwest cheating, one begins to wonder on what basis that type of assessment can be made. Not to be found in history, not to be found in the records. It was always that type of trying to overbalance in favor of the other. If it was the KNDP or Foncha, overbalance in favor of the Southwest. It was the KNC of Endele, overbalance in favor of the Northwest. and that showed in all ways. Because I mean, when it even came to elections, you found that more people voted for Endele in the northwest in Cambe. A good 66% in Cambe voted for Endele during the plebiscite, and then only 25% of them voted for Endele in Victoria. The rest went to KNDP and for reunification. So you look at all of this and people making these statements, they are not based on anything that can be found in history.
Now
You'll
let's
have
go
people
to
who,
yeah.
not just say you'll find people who would, for reasons of whatever, for whatever reasons, want to fan the flames of division, trying to work on conspiracy theories, and there are very many of them. And that's where, if I were to take Victor Julius Go, it will be on conspiracy theories because we don't write. History is based on principles. Before you get to any making any points in history, they should be logical, they should be chronological, and they should be based by statistics. You don't say what you want. There is nothing like talking of history and using your qualification. No, you don't use your qualification to write history. You use the facts, the research.
Now, Prof, let's move to
Yes.
some other very interesting thing. I followed the Prime Minister of the Republic of Cameroon, John Gute, in Bamenda recently. He made this remark. It's true that you definitely heard him make statements like, "It's time for us to, restore our independence. It's time for us to get back our territorial integrity, our dignity." And then he made a statement. He said, "The people of what he calls the Northwest are those who voted overwhelmingly for reunification, shy of Nkambe that you just pointed out." What do you think is the significance of that statement?
I don't know what significance because that one is, to me that was comic. Um, the, the majority voted for. And when you talk the majority of those in the northwest voted for reunification.
With
Konkambe
Cameroon?
in particular voted for integration with Nigeria. So I don't get the point it was making there.
Well, apparently he was trying to remind the people of Bamenda, as they have generally said in government circles, that you people appear to be those agitating most to get out of this union, whereas you are the one who got us into it. Perhaps was that another way of telling the people of this area that since you got us into it, do your utmost best to get us back out of it because it's not working?
I think that to me is a logical interpretation because if it was the majority, and of course the majority was always there, whether you are talking of Endele or talking of Foncha or talking of Joa or talking of Muna, they always knew that the majority of the parties came from the northwest. So that had to be factored in into everything you were doing. And if it was the northwesterners, the grasslanders, who voted massively in favor of reunification, and now they are agitating. Well, that too should be understood because they were always in the leadership. Leadership always began in the southwest, but when it came to taking decisive, making great decisions, you had to rely on northwest leadership. So if that were to be the case, and you're talking of the majority, if the majority voted in favor of reunification and they now think that for the same reasons for which they wanted reunification, it is now become sour, then that should be understood and listened to. Those are not points to be, I mean, whether he said it by mistake or he meant what he was saying, I think there was the truth in it.
Now there are some
That those who wanted it have not seen the use, have seen that they made mistakes, or they were. I wouldn't even say they made mistakes. They were deceived. There's a lot
now
of
let's
deception.
look at this,
Mm.
Professor Anthony Ndi. There, I've listened to some people say they are elite of the southern Cameroons who are within Mr. Paul Biya's government come out on the media and say the southern Cameroons had never been independent. That you know, I mean, the United Nations and the British just asked us to merge with La République du Cameroon because of the plebiscite of 11 February 1961. How do you respond to this cast of people?
No,
Will you
there's
be
nothing
true
to
to
argue about
what they
that.
are saying?
No, nothing to argue there. There was concrete independence at midnight on 30th September 1961. That is on paper. If I had a chance, I would show you the picture uh, of the instruments of government being handed over to Ahijo the by the British the British representative in Yaoundé. It's there on paper. It is the picture is there, and the descriptions, the wordings are all there. So there's no question of you can't go argue. Those are not when we talk of history. Those are the things we are referring to. You are talking of facts. You are talking of what you can show by. I mean, what is there on pic by is represented by facts by on in photographs and concretely. You
So
can't
what is
argue. You
clear? So
can,
what is clear here is that on the on February 11, 1961, the people of the southern Cameroons were asked a question during a plebiscite. How do you want to achieve your independence? Do you want to achieve independence and then you join the Federal Republic of Nigeria that's already independent? Or no, Nigeria wasn't even independent then because Nigeria will go ahead to be independent on October 1 as well. Or you want to achieve this independence and then join the already independent Republic of Cameroon. And so there was that vote on February 11, and overwhelmingly, our people decided to acquire independence and join La République du Cameroon. And then again, on April 21, 1961, the United Nations now goes ahead to hold a vote for the independence of the Southern Cameroons. Professor Anthony D, I'm coming back to you because I want to understand the significance of this vote on April 21, 1961, which comes after the people of the Southern Cameroons already voted in February that they would join La République du Cameroon. Why was this vote for the independence of the Southern Cameroons again important at the United Nations about 2 months after we had already determined we would join La République du Cameroon? Why was it necessary?
I think let's say it just brought in confusion, and we will see the work of France and I mean, if you look at those who voted in when that came up, we are talking, as you have said, after the plebiscite. We are talking of what took place after the Fumban Constitutional Conference. So that should not have happened at all because the decisions had been reached and everything agreed upon. So why was the need for this vote to be taken? But whatever reason there was, it did demonstrate one thing, that the French-speaking countries and the Republic of no, at the time then it was East Cameroon, led by France, voted against the independence of Southern Cameroon, which was already was just it was just a formality because it had already taken place. But that did not stop it because the majority of the people voted in favor of Southern Cameroon's independence.
Now,
On
Prof, I see some historical accounts that indicate that that vote perhaps was important because the Southern Cameroons, uh, simply indicated their intention that upon independence, they would be open to join with La République du Cameroon. And so it was necessary for the Southern Cameroons to be officially granted independence at the United Nations, giving them the leeway to negotiate a treaty of union with La République du Cameroon as an independent entity. So perhaps this is what really explains that vote of April 21. and of course, which La République boycotted because they definitely already had in mind that they would eventually annex this territory. So, getting the United Nations vote for independence for the Southern Cameroons could complicate things further for them. Do you agree with this perspective?
Logically, legally, I think that stands because I mean, I don't see how uh, Ahiju, who, I mean, well, Ahiju was not in favor of reunification very much, but eventually that was a condition for which he was allowed to become president by France, president of Cameroon, of the Federal Republic of Cameroon. He had first to accept that uh, he would be president of a united, I mean, of a federal the Federation of East and West Cameroon. He had to accept that before they allowed him to become president. So that's one of those things that took place that Ahiju was not elected, but simply was pushed forward by France. So if you take it that way, I think the points you have made stand. That it was simply to establish the fact that I mean, it actually made the point that they had other ulterior motives, and which became very clear, and have become clear even till today,
And
clearer
Prof,
till today.
yes, and I think there's also this question that comes to mind, and it's perhaps this appellation that gives the people of La République du Cameroon the notion to think that we were just part of their territory that was coming back. So, is the term reunification appropriate? Actually, who is
There was a
reunifying who?
debate. Sorry, there
Because
was
when
a
you talk
debate
of
on that.
reunification, I mean, they
Uh-huh.
have in their mind that okay, this meal was actually part of our territory that has just come back, so there was no point actually trying to, talk of two entities coming. Reason, like Mr. Paul Bia said, they just needed to swallow us in, uh, and the like. So this term reunification, was it really appropriate, or is it really appropriate?
It wasn't. It wasn't. I think they debated on it. I think I think they finally just agreed on reunification because it was easier to handle, easier to be able to recall. Uh, Initially, that was not what was in mind. There was a different appellation. So, I mean, they can say that because already the conference after the 1962, the year after the Fumban conference, after yes, the Fumban conference, when you had the UC convention in Ebolova, Ahiju was already talking of a small part of our country that had decided to come back. That's after signing into effect, the Federal Republic of Cameroon. The following year, the meeting at Ebolova, the UC meeting, it was already, and that was the problem because what has killed us throughout has been the fact that we have had a lot of inconsistency, a lot of psychophoning, a lot of deceit that has been used. That's what has destroyed us. So there was nothing you could take a leader for. They will say one thing today and say another thing tomorrow, and they were not accountable to anybody. So this has been when you talk of the problems we are facing. It's not that the people at Fumban, the Anglophones who went to Fumban, were
Or the Southern
incompetent. They
Cameroonians who
made
went to
mistakes.
Fumban?
Yes, no, not at all. It's the bad will, it's the deceit, that followed. That the Ahiju came to Fumban with the backing of France, and they already had his whole plan worked out because right in 1961, that same year, immediately after Fumban, he carved out the federations. You had in Boya, you had Ngo, who was what did we call him?
The state
Ngo
inspector,
was help me there.
the state inspector.
Ngo was the Cameroon was divided into six parts. into six divisions,
or
and
provinces.
Southern Cameroon became just one of them
Mhm.
with
Now,
Ngo.
I like us to look at this perspective that yeah, what happened? I mean, in 1972 was a logical flow because way back in 1961, the British appeared to already have gotten to, I mean, some kind of entente with the French that the southern Cameroons would eventually be assimilated. Reason, because I don't know what explanation you will give that rather than giving the instruments of independence of state to Foncha, who was the prime minister of the southern Cameroons, the British consul rather handed this to Ahijo or some a different country. How do you explain this?
I have this down. The in Southern West Cameroon revisited 1950 to 1972, unveiling inescapable traps. The first set of traps were set up by the British government, which was debating on when they were deciding where to really who to give Southern Cameroons to. Was it going to be Nigeria or was it going to be Republic of Cameroon? They had that on as their plans, and they began by dividing the trust territory of southern Cameroons into two, north and south, to weaken them. And then, of course, eventually, they gave Southern Cameroons to, I mean, yes, they allowed Southern Cameroons to vote and join Republic of Cameroon. And they didn't want anything to happen that would dent, the British and the northern part of northern Cameroons, to join Southern Cameroons. So the British already had the plans to give to give Southern Cameroons either to France or to Nigeria. And they decided eventually to give it to France, and then giving it to France through Republic of Cameroon. So that is actually what you have, in black and white. So that was one of the traps. And when I say inescapable traps, that's the title of a book I wrote. It doesn't come from me. It comes from Malcolm Mean, who wrote a book, on British policy in southern Cameroons, and he described the situation into which Poncha was being put in a trap, an inescapable trap from which he could never come out. And so the first part of that trap, as I define, was, organized by Britain, making sure that southern Cameroons was parceled and handed over to France in the guise of Republic of Cameroon. And then that was up to 1961. And after that, when independence came, they handed over southern Cameroons into the hands of Ahiju. So that was the second set of traps. The first set of traps was under Britain, and the second set of traps was under Ahiju, which is what southern Cameroonians are suffering till today. It's the traps from which Malcolm Min saw they would never escape, inescapable traps. That I got that from the book he wrote.
So, Prof, were you did you take part in the referendum or of 1972?
Do I remember very well what I did? I think I did. But it didn't matter at all. If you say that, it didn't, because there were very funny situations. It didn't matter whether anybody took part in it or not. It did
What I'm
not.
interested about is I actually want to know, I mean, what happened to the ballot papers? What kind of ballot papers did you have? Because we've
It
seen
was either
pictures of
we
ballot
or
papers. Some say
no.
it was
I don't
we
think I
and
voted.
yes.
Yes, now I can understand. You went in there. You had just two choices. You choose between we and yes.
So in effect, there was no vote.
We There was no vote, and if there was any vote, it didn't count. I can tell you point of view. When I was there in Womb as a teacher, when we had elections, the results came out. You had to listen to how people had voted in other areas, and then you decided how many, what percentage of votes to give for your own place. And so, if you heard that, I mean, you were there, elections had been organized, Acquire was giving results, um, other far off places were giving results, and then you were there in womb. What were you going to say? So you had to be, without opening any ballot boxes, you gave the results, and that was a trend that took place throughout. And under Ahiju, the thing was 100%. Everything had to be 100%, and they defended it very well to show that they were very advanced.
Now, I like us to talk a bit about the eventual disappearance of the Southern Cameroons in 1984, because when we go 1961, the Southern Cameroons get into, I mean, a union with La République du Cameroun upon achieving its independence on September 30, 1961. So on the 1st of October, they get into something called, a Federal Republic of Cameroon with La République du Cameroun. And then in that construct, we become known as West Cameroon. So that's when we change the name. And then in 1972, after the discovery of oil, West Cameroon disappears. The Southern Cameroon had disappeared into West Cameroon. West Cameroon now disappears into something called the United Republic of Cameroon, where you no longer have mention of either West Cameroon or East Cameroon. And then suddenly, by decree in 1984, we now have even the United Republic of Cameroon disappearing, and we suddenly revert to something known as the Republic of Cameroon that we met on, was already in existence on January 1, 1960. So, what would you say, led to this kind of transformation, and how did we get there without a fight? How did we get there without a fight? How can you explain this?
Oh, okay, okay. You have used the right word, without a fight. Only a fool will go fight hitting his head against a stone wall or under against. There was no way after 1966 that anybody could, any Southern Cameroonian, beginning from Foncha through Jua, and of course, by the time they got to Mona, everything had been resolved in favor of La République. There was no way anybody could raise a finger to talk of fighting. Like 1972, one of the things which you have that perhaps is not known, you cannot, I have a bit of it in one of my books, is that uh, when you had a charade taking place in 1972, the 20th May referendum, you know, there was very serious opposition by members of parliament. But then when they met in Fonlon's house by the lakeside in Yaoundé, they discussed, they looked at the intricacies, and then it became very clear because as they met there having their meeting. The residence was surrounded by troops, and they just knew that if they whatever they did there, if they were to raise their voices louder, they would just be eliminated in there, and that would be all. So that was just an example of what was happening all over. That there was no way anybody could raise the finger, beginning from 1966 with the creation of the CNU, through 1972, and of course up to 1984 when Bia put the last nail on the coffin. There was anybody who was talking about the fact that there was no fight doesn't know what the people went through. You could not raise a finger. No, nobody could oppose. Not, I mean, if Foncha could be made to go out and campaign, if Dwa could be made to go out and campaign, for the referendum in 1972, then tell me what we are talking about. Because you were not doing it because you liked it. You were simply, whether you did it or not, but you could not refuse and be There was no way you could refuse and still be. No. If you refuse, then you disappeared.
Well,
So
Prof,
whatever they wanted was implemented.
let's get another, a short musical interlude, and then when we come back, we conclude on this program. Yeah, Prof, we are back from the break, and I would like to, I'd like us to get into the nitty gritties of what we are today facing, and I like to find out what are your thoughts with respect to the liberation struggle that is ongoing right now, because I recall that late Dr. John Gu Foncha, when he had tried and it was beyond him, he is on record to have told President Ahijo that no problem, you can manhandle us the way you can. Now, when our children grow up, they will fight. Would you say what is happening now is a logical consequence of what Foncha said at the time, that needed a never again generation like ours to rise up to say enough is enough?
Perfectly so. And what he was saying was not very new. It had already begun showing up in 1964. What they call the Funland. There was another still a meeting uh, where Funland, some sort of presided, and when they were there, the KNDP was pointing out that they were so subsumed that their voices were not being heard. They had been working together with UC, but whatever proposals they made never got anywhere. And that meeting in 1964 only showed to Ahiju the fact that he was dealing with people whom he could not trust. And so the next thing after 1966 was after 1954, was introduce the CNU. And that was the end of all the political parties.
That's after 1964.
Um,
You say after
1964, yes.
1964.
Yeah, because the meeting which was convened and presided over uh, by by Fonlon was in 1954, pointing out that
1964.
Southern Cameroonians were voiceless.
Okay.
And then, in that meeting, after that meeting, Ahijo's people simply concluded that you could not continue with Foncha, with soft handling. So the best thing was to introduce a radical change, and that took place 2 years later with the introduction of the CNU. And with the CNU, there was only one voice, and that voice was that of the president. And the things were being worked out in such a way that by 1972, because after 1966, they tried draft for some time, and then of course was dismissed in 1968, and 2 years later, 1970, Foncha was dismissed, and they put up Foncha. They put up Muna. So that was the trend. The trend was making sure that there was no opposition of whatever kind
Where
taking
was the
place.
Southern Cameroons police all this while? Because I know we
Sorry,
didn't have an army at least, but we had a well-trained police force. Where was the Southern Cameroons police that could, be used to rise against these injustices?
are you talking just of the police or the mobile wing? The mobile wing were very powerful, and the first outing they made, they floored the troops of the Republic of Cameroon. So after that, as I'm saying, beginning from 1966, all this uh, everything that showed strength on the side of Southern Cameroons was simply emaciated, simply destroyed in preparation for what took place in 1972, and of course, eventually what took place in 1984. Now, let me just quickly say this. I was given a chance, I was invited by the Sultan of Fumban, uh, I think that was 2018, before Ahiji was given, uh, he made the statement in France. And so when we were talking, I pointed out to him that, if you look at the history of Southern Cameroons, it's all very powerful, and it grows more and more powerful. I mean, it goes, the strength grows from day to day, and that um, there is no way whenever. But I was saying this, without reference to whatever Wilbur said in Parliament, but looking at the trends in Southern Cameroon history, looking at the fact that in 1953, as I mean, they were able to fight against the Igbos, fight against the British, and quit Nigeria. And then, of course, eventually they got their own House of Assembly in 1954. So I was just pointing out that the strength of Southern Cameroonians was one that was gathering strength, was gathering momentum, and that nobody would ever do anything to it. That's the soul which I heard you talk about when you began. That soul is a true soul. And then, so when I talked to him, he pointed out to me that the problem in southern Cameroons was that after 1961 they had put together all the structures ready for total and total annexation, no, total assimilation, and that was through the uh, through whatever organs were put in place, run by uh, Musonge and so on, and that they were not working. That if if this assimilation had worked the way they wanted through using the language, then there will be no problem, because they had already worked it out so carefully that within 10 years, by 1972, from 1961, Southern Cameroonians would have so much become francophones that there will be no problem. They will simply be absorbed without any difficulty. And so when
Yeah,
you see
Prof, I
what took
will
place in
interrupt
1970,
you there because we are running out of time. We have just three
there
minutes
you
to
are.
go. So I'd like
Yes.
to, in conclusion of this program, I'd like to know where you stand on what is going on right now. We have, I mean, a few people who are in a very thick minority talking about, you know, getting back to the federal experience, of which, of course, La République du Cameroon is not even looking at. We had others talking about, a unitary state, and you have the overwhelming majority talking about absolute independence. Where do you stand on this?
My stand is very, very clear. It has been clear right from I'm a teacher and I've written what I'm saying. Anybody who has lived the experience, if you read my book, The Golden Age of Southern Cameroons, it was written in 2015, and I already pointed out that we're headed for the crisis which we are facing now. So my stand is clear that anybody who has lived the experience these 4 years, I mean, in 2015, I talked of a federation. That was my stand. Let's try to get a federation wherein we can resolve our differences and stay together. But after the experiences, there is nobody who has a head on his shoulders, who reasons squarely, that will still be talking of federation, federalism or whatever. That simply does not arise. We have so, I mean, the differences have become so clear that we can't talk. It's better that we divide and then work as I mean, we see ourselves as belonging separately and dividing and deciding how we can cooperate as separate nations rather than thinking of going together. That does not arise.
Thank you very much, Professor Anthony D. It was really a pleasure having you on this program, The Soul of the Southern Cameroons. And I want to thank all those who spent time this 90 minutes with us on this program. And I want to promise that when we come back to the fifth edition of this program, I will be bringing on board a gentle lady who lived through this whole experience and who today believes that anyone, I mean anyone, still talking about federalism or any form of union with La République du Cameroon is simply misguided. And so, my people, that is how we wrap up things on the soul of the Southern Cameroons today. See you next Saturday when it will be 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 9 p.m. Southern Cameroon's time. Until then, it's have a nice time.